Welcome back to Chow Time Pods. Your host, Red. I got videos today from AllAsianDilemmas.
This was probably one of the times when feminism in Japan was confronted most harshly. Japan is considered one of the countries where the feminist movement has been particularly intense. In just the past 3 years, more than 6,000 cases of this type of accusation have occurred, and surprisingly about 80% of them ended up being false. For example, someone accidentally...
Shocker. 80% of the accusations of these types of things are false? No, couldn't be.
bumps into a woman on a bus, and she immediately starts shouting sexual harassment. After that, the accusation is sometimes used to extort money from men. If the man refuses to pay compensation, he may end up being publicly exposed or even face legal problems and prison.
Imagine making laws that makes it easier for one group of people, one group of sex, to extort the other.
But this year something unusual happened in Japan. Some men began reacting in what many describe as an almost epic way. They realized that in Japan...
If you guys don't know, you'll know now. If you didn't know,
defamation can
now
lead to
you'll
up to
know.
3 years in prison, while a physical fight between two people usually results in no more than about 15 days of detention. So when...
So, if these women start falsely accusing these guys, you know what these guys do? They start beating them up! Because you only think for 15 days in prison instead.
some of them encounter this kind of feminist blackmail, they respond in a way that many people jokingly call a samurai duel. They grab their briefcase or whatever object they have in hand and start fighting. What's even more curious is that they do it in a technical way. They avoid hitting vital areas. As a result, even when the police arrive, the situation is usually treated simply as a mutual fight. In addition,
so funny. It's like, oh, you want to accuse me? You want to accuse me?
security cameras often show that the woman approached first. But the story doesn't end there. Recently, there was also a case of a double standard at a university in Shanghai. It began when a female student secretly took a photo of a male student and posted it on the campus confession wall, saying that he had a very attractive body. Many girls agreed in the comments. Some male students were uncomfortable with it, but the issue did not spread much because no one wanted to make a big deal out of it.
Sure.
However, a few days later there was a major twist. One student decided to run an experiment.
The opposite,
he took a photo of the building across the way from the same angle but claimed it was the female dormitory, and he posted the exact same caption on the confession wall. As expected, as soon as the post appeared, countless girls began attacking him verbally, saying it was immoral, disgusting, and criminal.
Yep.
The student who posted the photo...
Double standards. It's the only standards women have. It doesn't matter what country they come from.
was called a pervert and a scoundrel, and some people even asked for his personal information so they could report him to the police.
So they wanted to dox him.
Claiming that it was necessary to defend women's rights. Shortly afterward, the author himself came forward and revealed that the whole thing was actually a social experiment. The result was extremely clear and direct, showing almost perfectly what many people call a gender double standard. The discussion exploded on the internet and quickly accumulated more than 10,000 comments. From that debate, many people began to look more closely at a bigger question. After all, how did the feminist movement that lasted about 30 years in Japan during the Heisei era end up, according to some critics, harming society as a whole? The story begins with a woman named Kobayashi Maro. Her life has recently drawn attention again. She was one of the most beautiful TV presenters in Japan and had an extremely promising future ahead of her. Later, she married Ichikawa Ibizo, a famous kabuki actor considered a national treasure in the country. After...
Damn. To be considered a national treasure in your country. You the man.
the marriage, however, the script of her life seemed to change completely, as if it had been forced into a kind of hell mode. After getting married, she was forced to give up her career and ended up living almost like a high-level servant within the family, following strict rules and taking care of traditional family duties until late into the night. Meanwhile, her husband lived a life full of parties and scandals and was photographed several times involved in infidelity. Even so, it was she who appeared in front of the media to apologize, with a tired face, bowing to the cameras and saying she was sorry, that she had not taken good care of her
I see.
and had caused trouble for him. But the most shocking part came later. In 2017, at the age of 35, she died from breast cancer.
Oh my.
Just 2 weeks after her death, That same husband who had been portrayed as deeply devoted was photographed entering hotels with a new partner. Even so, a man like him is still treated as a respected figure in Japan and even appeared prominently in the opening ceremony of the Tokyo Olympics. Hearing all of this, many people are left with a lot of questions. How can something like this happen in a developed country? To understand it, we need to go back
Yeah, I can see why women are upset at something like that.
about 30 years, to a time when Japan was experiencing enormous prosperity, when it seemed like money was everywhere and women were treated almost like social goddesses. It was during this period that what many called a tower of feminism built on money began to rise, only to later collapse almost overnight. Despite being a developed country, Japan ranked 118th in the 2024 Global Gender Gap Report.
Damn.
Compared with other developed nations, the gap is indeed quite large, although some people consider this ranking unreliable and use it only as a reference. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Japan was at the peak of its economic bubble. It was a time when it felt like even the air smelled like money. Japanese women at that time were almost treated like goddesses. In 1991, a women's magazine released a manifesto that became extremely popular and was seen as almost a Bible for independent women of that generation. The idea promoted was that the new Heisei woman should have four.
It's funny that feminism took a big hold in these countries because I think they're just because they're smaller. Like Japan is so much smaller than the United States, so is South Korea. So when anything spreads or anything happens in those countries, it really happens and quickly. That's why I think Japan and South Korea are actually much worse when it comes to relationships, birth rates, and things like that, because they're just so much smaller of a macrocosm than the United States is. Because you look at the United States, the East Coast and the West Coast aren't even close to each other. And then the Midwest is also like a whole another entity itself.
4 boyfriends. One responsible for driving and taking her places, one responsible for paying for meals, one responsible for giving gifts, and finally one for marriage. Yes, the idea openly treated men as tools, and not just one but 4 of them. At the time, this was considered a modern trend. Capital quickly noticed this trend and began directing the market toward female consumption.
Of course.
Companies started treating women as the most important consumers.
That's exactly what's happening here.
Society entered a period of intense consumption. In luxury restaurants in Ginza, Tokyo, a meal that cost around 5,000 yen to produce was sold for 30,000 yen as a test of love. If a man refused to pay the bill, it meant he did not truly love her. In March, department stores launched diamond rings marketed as self-reward gifts for women, and sales were so strong that staff could barely keep up with the money flowing in. Some shopping malls.
I see corporations kind of ruin a lot of things, doesn't it seem? Like they saw these opportunities, so they just created things to kind of force interaction in a horrible way. Oh, you love her? Buy her this gift. We know it's overpriced. Everybody knows this price is over. This price is over. This gift is overpriced. But are you gonna buy it? Are you gonna buy it for her? Because if you don't, you a loser and you don't love her. Damn. Marketing at its finest.
Even converted men's restrooms into waiting areas for husbands, where men sat while their wives spent.
Wait. We lost our restrooms? And it just turned into a waiting area? What?
Money using their credit cards. At the peak of that era, the consumption power of urban Japanese women was 5 to 8 times higher than that of men.
Damn.
This was not because women earned more money, but because men's salaries flowed continuously into their pockets.
Yep.
It was common to see young office workers carrying several credit cards from different boyfriends while moving between luxury stores.
Damn.
It looked like the ultimate celebration of consumerism. However, almost no one realized that this apparent rise of feminism was actually heavily driven by capitalism and existing social structures.
Yes.
Many critics say that the version of feminism in Japan at that time was already distorted from the beginning. Demands for women's rights started to turn into strange claims. Some proposals included banning women from working overtime or considering it harassment if male colleagues sent.
They just want privileges. What would he say? Women just want female privileges. That's what feminism is. That's what they advocate for. That's what they fight for constantly.
Too many emails during the day. These measures appeared to protect women but avoided the real core issues: equal pay, promotion opportunities, and decision-making power within companies. Female employment did increase, but more than 90% of management positions remained firmly in the hands of men. Meanwhile, The same magazines promoting ideas like having 4 boyfriends were run by male editors who tried to please female readers while privately seeing them as consumers. This seemingly prosperous tower of feminism was built on fragile foundations. When
Built on
Japan's central
lies.
bank burst the economic bubble in 1990, the entire structure collapsed. The economic winter arrived quickly.
1990, so it's been what, 35 years now, and these people are worse off, it seems.
And the first people affected were those who had once been the most celebrated. Layoffs hit industries
Women.
such as restaurants and retail particularly hard, sectors where more than 70% of workers were women. Almost overnight, about 2 million women working in non-regular employment lost their income. They had once been the driving force of consumption, but now they became costs to be eliminated.
Yep.
The dating and relationship
Isn't that
market
funny?
also changed dramatically. During the boom years, men expressed love by giving luxury goods, but after the bubble burst, those gifts became objects of dispute. There were cases where men asked courts to return expensive gifts they had given years earlier. At the same time, intense arguments between men and women began appearing online. Some women insulted men as useless, while some men accused women of only wanting their money.
True.
In the workplace, doors began closing even more for women. Some laws that originally aimed to protect women, such as restrictions on heavy labor or business travel, were used by companies as excuses not to hire them.
Exactly. You want privileges at work? That's gonna put you at a disadvantage to a man. Why would I hire you? You cost me more money, and you're a lot more work to deal with, and I can't even work you as hard as I can a man. I'm just gonna hire a man.
Even some female
Duh.
managers publicly said hiring women was too troublesome. At the same time, many jobs disappeared. Manufacturing jobs shrank dramatically, and in the remaining positions in transport or logistics, men were usually preferred.
Yeah.
By 2010, the unemployment rate among women aged 25 to 34 was far higher than that of men in the same age group. With the traditional employment path blocked, many women began noticing advertisements covering subway stations offering other kinds of work. A troubling phenomenon started to emerge. In the 10 years after the bubble collapsed, Japan's adult industry expanded rapidly. By 2021, the market was estimated at around $70 billion.
I do agree the Japanese corn industry is huge.
Jobs that were once considered taboo became, for many ordinary women, one of the last economic survival options. The distance between the fashionable women who once proudly talked about having 4 boyfriends and the women later struggling to survive was essentially the distance between prosperity and economic collapse. This
Shocker. When men spend money and men make a lot of money, women get to do what they want. And men stop spending money, women become broke too.
systemic problem appeared across many aspects of Japanese society. In the workplace, women's representation in leadership positions remains extremely low, with less than 10% of executives being female. In family life,
Can you imagine, working in a company and some woman tries to accuse you of harassment or something, and all of a sudden you're just like, I'm just gonna beat her up. I'm gonna beat her up right now, so she can't accuse me of harassment. It's just gonna end up being like a fist fight kind of thing. That is diabolical work.
many women who have children see their chances of promotion drop dramatically, because society still expects them to return home and focus on being wives and mothers. The pandemic made many of these issues even more visible, and its effects continue today. Still, it is important to remember that the difficulties faced by Japanese women cannot be attributed only to feminism. Many other social factors are involved, including the country's economic structure and the way capitalism operates there. Today, Japan faces an even bigger problem: rapid population aging. It is estimated that by 2065, about 38.4% of the population will be over 65 years old.
Damn, that's 40% of the population. That is a huge chunk that is aging and dying off.
The older generation that supported the country with high savings rates is disappearing, and the generation replacing them will receive much smaller pensions, around 40,000 yen per month, which is roughly a little over 2,000 riaris. For many people in Japan, that is barely enough for basic survival. Because of this, some analysts argue that societies should avoid turning social movements into tools of consumerism.
Yeah.
When ideas of equality
Stop
become
it.
tied to the logic that spending more money means loving more, a consumption trap is created, similar to what happened in Japan at that time.
Yeah, it's happening here. Consumption trap. Oh, you don't spend money on me? You don't love me? A $200 date on the first date, duh.
Issue arises when debates between men and women are fueled by influencers who make money attacking one side or the other, because that kind of content generates attention but also deepens social division. True equality between men and women, according to many experts, has never been a war between the two sides. It is not enough to simply joke about men or women in entertainment shows. The issue involves concrete policies, such as fair parental leave systems, the elimination of workplace discrimination, equal access to education, and structural reforms that allow society as a whole to progress together. Without economic independence, any ideology becomes nothing more than a castle in the air. The lesson many say Japan learned over these 30 years is simple. When a flood arrives, the most luxurious castles built on sand are always the first to disappear.
Sure.
The content presented here represents only an analysis of phenomena observed during a specific historical period and does not constitute a judgment of modern feminist movements. Gender equality must be achieved through institutional reforms and not through conflict between men and women.
As I've said in other videos about this trend, I want to make one thing very clear. I'm not in favor of violence.
I also thought it was a weird way to go about it, but I mean, 3 years in jail plus all that other stuff or 15 days in jail. I'll beat up a woman that's going only for 15 days in jail instead of 3. It just makes sense, right? Should you go about beating women up? No. But if she accuses you of false things, fair game.
That needs to be stated clearly. But at the same time, when a movement reaches an extreme, it often ends up being confronted by another extreme. In practice, that's what is happening in some parts of Asia today. In Japan, many men have started reacting in more radical ways after years of accumulated frustration.
I mean, what can you do? Like, he's right, years of frustration. Men are feeling that here in the West, in the United States. But laws haven't gotten that crazy yet. But laws are similar to that in the UK. And UK is going towards this route, it seems.
Not because it's ideal, but because, from their perspective, it felt like the rules of the game had become completely unbalanced. When a society reaches that point, when one side feels it has completely lost the ability to defend itself within normal rules, more extreme responses begin to appear.
Yep.
And Japan might just be one example of something larger that is happening across several Asian countries. In China, for example, the situation is becoming even more radical. On one hand, there are still many men who remain submissive to social pressure, afraid of being judged by society for not having a marriage, a house, or a family. But at the same time, another completely different group is starting to emerge, a group of men who have simply decided they will no longer accept this system. Some of them are adopting strategies that resemble the philosophy of Chinese Tai Chi. Instead of directly confronting the feminist movement, they begin to use the logic of the system itself against it. But in many cases, this ends up being even more brutal on a social and psychological level. In fact, I already have a full video prepared about this phenomenon in China. It's a much heavier video that explains exactly how this Tai Chi strategy is being used by some Chinese men to
It makes sense. Force come at me, move force to the side around me. I don't want to deal with that.
Respond to this new social dynamic.
I gotta give it to Japanese men. You know, like, how do we avoid 3 years of prison time for false accusations? Oh, you know what? Let me just beat her up. I'll take the 15 days. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. I really appreciate that. And I'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.